other institutions like PPSA, they'll be concerned about administrative justice, they'll be concerned about corruption, they'll be concerned about ethics. That is how...
Your mandate was singular up until last year?
Up until last year.
Okay. What has changed in terms of your mandate? And I want to expand it further by going back to tell Botswana, our viewers, whoever is watching on digital platforms, as I've alluded, on the mandate, the general mandate of the Ombudsman.
Musirelate. Our original legislation, or the legislation that governed us, was the Ombudsman Act of 1995, which really took after the classical ombudsman, where we intercede between members of the public and government excesses. And government excesses, I mean excesses of government officials, even contrary to government policy. Whereas come 2021, the law was then amended, and we got Ombudsman Act Amendment Act, Act number 22 of 2021. And that one actually conferred an additional mandate on us, which is the protection and promotion of human rights.
Protection, very key, and promotion of human rights.
Of human rights.
So you would say at this point you are fully equipped, fully capacitated with the legal instruments to execute your mandate? Now
we have a dual mandate, administrative justice and human rights.
Okay, thank you. Now, the conference happening here, the Expo, on the 29th July to the 2nd of August, commencing next week until the beginning of August. Who is in attendance? I see that is over 500 delegates are coming in. Ombuds officers, human rights bodies. Where are they coming from? Are they coming from the SADC region, from the entire African continent? Where are they coming from?
They're coming from all corners of the world. First and foremost, as Botswana, we are members of the African Ombudsman and Mediators Association, which really, that is the continental body. And I think we have about 47 member states from Africa.
African body?
Yeah. Okay. And we also have the International Ombudsman Institute, which is now a global body with representation from Africa, from Europe, from Latin America, from the Americas.
So the world of the Ombudsman would have converged in
basically, we want all governance institutions, whether pure classical ombudsman offices, hybrid institutions like what we are now, human rights, as well as administrative justice, human rights commissions to be here, grievance handlers to be here, regulatory bodies to be here.
Let me ask you, Mr. Gaselabone, on behalf of the citizens who are watching, or anyone that is in this country at this point, how do you protect us? How do you protect us?
The protection that we offer is by way of interceding between the citizens and government. And really, earlier on, Richardson raised the question, what business do you have in this area when we have the courts? And the point that I made was, for you to get your grievances ventilated in a court of law, you need to engage a lawyer. It's a litigation process. And therefore, money is involved. And the lack of money or inability to engage a lawyer may keep you out of that process. Whereas with ombudsman institutions, really, or maybe, let me say this, Ben, the ombudsman as a concept dates back to the year 1809. So it has more than 100 years in development.
Almost 200 years,
almost,
if not more.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very old concept, but that caught on quite slowly from the Scandinavian countries. Initially, it was just Sweden, before other Scandinavian countries came on board. and before Tanzania came on board as the first African country in 1965. So, but the idea is this. The idea is, as a democratic state, as a democratic country, any democratic government wants things to be done right.
Okay, now let's simplify that which I asked.
All right.
In the context of Botswana television here, or let me leave Botswana television, okay. In the context of an employee, for example, within a government office, maybe Office X or Office H, what kind of an anomaly would affect that particular officer or employee to an extent that you chip in? Just paint for us how you would protect, how you would come in and ensure that justice prevails.
Justice prevails.
Yes, or some rights are not are not tempered with.
Let me give this example. You know, in the public service, we are governed by the Public Service Act.
Yes.
We are governed by the general orders. We are governed by directives and saving grants.
Okay.
And the whole idea of having this framework is such that people can be treated equally.
Okay.
And therefore, where a directive is misapplied, it causes you injustice.
Yes.
It may well be that, let me give this example. You know, there's this animal called subsistence allowance in lieu of decent accommodation.
Yes.
You know, there was a time where public officers in far-flung areas were actually living in asbestos houses.
Yes, yes. Which inhabitable conditions.
Inhabitable conditions.
Where even they would even pose a health hazard.
Exactly.
As asbestos, as you say.
Exactly.
We know the story of asbestos in the mines and stuff. Yeah.
And then government takes a decision that from now on, all public officers should live in habitable houses.
Yes.
And if they are not in habitable houses, they need to be paid some compensation.
Okay.
But then, in some instances, that benefit is withheld from people.
Is that where you can come in?
That is when we come in.
Is that where you've come in again before?
Time and time again.
And you solved it?
Time and time again.
Okay, now let's come back to the expo. The reason why you are here. I understand that it is the second one. There was an inaugural one that happened some years ago. How long ago was that?
That was in 2019 in Abuja, Nigeria.
Why the gap? The first one, 2019, the second one, 5 years down the line.
5 years down the line. The idea was to hold this every 2 years.
Okay.
But unfortunately, as you know, come 2020, we had COVID.
Okay.
And because of that, everything came to a stop, and the idea was resuscitated in 2022. And it being resuscitated in 2022, the question is, out of the 47 members, who is willing to host the event?
You raised your hand.
Yes, we raised our hands as Botswana.
And because of the My strategy, you've been seeing quite a number of august global gatherings happening here in Botswana. And one wonders, 2019, when the inaugural one happened in Abuja, in the Niger area, to now, what has happened in terms of the evolution of Ombudsman? How has it metamorphosed with time since the last one?
Really, I can only speak to the local evolution.
Yes, please.
Because having made reference to the inaugural Ombudsman institution being constituted in 1809, really the whole concept globally took years to develop.
Okay.
And as it is, for us, the key thing is this, that come 2021, we got new legislation that actually recognized that we need to have an additional mandate on human rights. And incidentally, this goes back to a 2020 resolution of the United Nations, where they really made the statement that it is impossible to separate maladministration from violation of human rights.
Okay.
So let's recognize that each and every ombudsman institution is on its own a human rights protection body.
Have you been innovative enough as the ombudsman, whether here locally or internationally, in terms of implementing or enhancing transparency and accountability where you are operating as an ombudsman?
Yes, sir. In the local context, really, most of our offices, they usually suffer from resource constraints. And therefore, we are not able to do what we want to do. And I remember there was a time we thought, other countries are forging ahead with computerized case management system to make tracking of cases easy, internally, supervision, would like to get into this bandwagon. But unfortunately, we didn't have the funds. And out of these international relations, the Ombudsman of Ontario then said, Ombudsman Botswana, we are actually upgrading our case management system. And if you are willing, we can give you our old system to operate with. We took it, and then it gave us a taste of how to pursue cases digitally. But unfortunately, because it was a donation, when it developed problems, there was no service level agreement in place.
SLA.
And later on, now this is in the 2006, I believe, 2006, 2007, still in the spirit of International Ombudsman Corporation, the Ombudsman of New Zealand also offered to give us their old system. But unfortunately, it required humongous amounts of bandwidth. And we said, no, we don't have that kind of bandwidth.
But maybe it begs the question. We have other institutions in our country. You talk about land administrators. You talk about our courts, case management in the courts. People, they talk about backlog, melala. We've been seeing how government has been robust and bullish and intentional on ensuring that Botswana banelwa ditshakere. Lona ko dikganyeng tsa lona tsa ombudsman, do you have cases that are pending and there are piles and piles, or yours is a manageable one?
I think it's relative. It's relative in the sense that we propose to complete all our cases within a period of 6 months.
So turnaround time?
Yeah, it's our turnaround time.
Why 6 months?
Yeah. Well, 6 months, we thought that would be enough time for us to engage with all relevant parties, get all the information, and place us in a position to come to a concrete decision that really is fair to all parties concerned.
And again, now it speaks to the issue of the ombudsman and how effectively you collaborate with those human rights bodies to address systemic issues of injustice and discrimination that is there. It's something that is not peculiar to one locality. Across the spectrum of the globe, you realize that there's injustices, there's discrimination. How do you, as the ombudsman, club efforts with other organs to ensure that you address some of these issues?
I think each and every national institution always has sister departments or sister oversight institutions locally. So in our context, there was a time we had a tripartite memorandum of understanding between ourselves, between DCEC, between the Office of the Auditor General, looking at the fact that we are effectively in the same area, though the approaches are different. And now, with the advent of the Legal Aid Botswana, because they are also giving free legal services. And some matters that may not be in our jurisdiction, particularly because, you know, this name Musireleti.
Yes.
You know, a typical Motswana would say, Urile o Musireleti.
So
I have an issue with my husband.
From my husband, from my wife,
from my husband,
from my abusive employer, and so on and so forth. Yes.
You get the point. When the Ombudsman is set up to offer protection from governmental action, not individual action. And now we have to quickly pick it up that, no, you can actually get assistance with the sister oversight institution by the name of Legal Aid Botswana.
Indeed, you are working. You are working, and now you have been amplified in terms of your mandate. you've been equipped. But obviously there are challenges.
But,
what are the challenges?
Ben, before the challenges, let me go back to the previous question, where I was just laying the background in terms of how we want to leverage on technology.
Okay.
And, but then that has now come to fruition, particularly under the auspices of smart boards,
Okay.
or Gov Online. And we are at a stage now where the Office of the Ombudsman, the Industrial Court, the Department of Labor,
Okay.
and the Competition Tribunal
Okay.
actually developed a computerized case management system
Okay.
under the auspices of Gov Online.
A shared system.
Yeah. No, not shared.
Okay.
Developed by the same consultant,
Okay.
but factoring in the peculiarities
Okay.
of each institution's work. And now that system is in operation at this stage internally.
Okay.
But where it's actually more important, and also feeding onto the question of effectiveness and efficiency, is that it's going to be linked to the government portal, such that now people can access our services off-site. Okay. Somebody is in Letlhakeng, he's got a Sedilami, can just type out a complaint to the Office of the Ombudsman,
okay.
send to the government portal. The government portal receives it, transmits it to our case management system.
And it's something that if they lodge such a complaint electronically, you receive it real time? You respond real time?
Yeah, and in fact, we are able to acknowledge, we are able to give feedback still through the same medium.
Okay. No, kudos to your office.
Yes.
And those that you are working with. That is quite commendable. Now, back to that question of challenges that you face as an office of the Ombudsman, or just offices of the Ombudsman. Let's not really localize it to Botswana, because we are talking global issues, especially on the issue of independence, effectiveness, considering some politically sensitive environments.
Yes,
How do you do it there? And what are the challenges?
Well, the challenges, you've picked this one up. First is that of independence or perceived independence. And two is issues of resource constraints. Because for me, I usually say that at times we forget to count the cost of maladministration. And therefore, when we have to pay up as government for maladministration, you know, it totally disrupts our budgets. But then, really the challenge is, for us, is that of resource constraints. Okay. And resource constraints refers to the finances that you get. It refers to the personnel that you get. Do you have sufficient personnel to execute
human capital?
Human capital to execute your mandate? Do you have enough resources to actually talk to Botswana about what you are there for, what you are there to do for them, and how they can access you?
And talking about talking to Botswana, do they know you enough as the Ombudsman, Olimo Sirilids? How well have you executed your outreach programs to ensure that there's education on your office and its mandate, and then you are you are there for our people?
We are continuously, year in, year out, educating Botswana. But the thing with education is you can never say it's enough.
Okay.
And I'll say this, Ben, you know, things have changed a lot. There was a time where you hold a Khotla meeting, you have 100 people attending. Lately, people don't attend Khotla meetings. But at the same time, you still have people who attend Khotla meetings. So it means you need to carry on conducting Khotla meetings. And at the same time, you say, people these days, they're always around shopping malls. So let's do mall campaigns.
Where there's foot traffic.
Where there's foot traffic, yeah. Let's do mall campaigns. Let's have an Ombudsman Facebook page. Let's have a website.
You do have a website?
Unfortunately, not now.
Do you have a Facebook page?
We do.
The outreach is wide. It's okay if you have a Facebook page. Now let us talk about this expo, International Ombuds Expo, IOE. 500 participants or over 500 participants from across the globe.
From across the globe, yes.
What are the expectations? What is really going to become of whatever deliberations that are there? And are we going to be having those repertoire services where maybe you're going to collate all the contributions, maybe come up with a report? What do you expect at the end of it all?
Okay, it's two ways. We call it Ombuds Expo because it has three aspects. You have the plenary session, that big room where the most important discussions or presentations are made. And then you have parallel sessions or expert discussions.
Okay.
For over 2 days on a daily basis, we'll be running up to six different parallel sessions, which are instructive and informative. They are meant for the practitioners of oversight institutions to share experiences, learn from each other, improve their systems. And at the same time, we have the exhibition itself at the Tupo Hall, where on any given day, Ben Putero can walk in there and see what are the South Africans doing at the Public Protector's office, at the Equality Commission. On the other hand, what are the Austrians doing? Because remember, ombudsmanship has evolved to the extent that some countries, they actually have a media ombudsman.
Okay, okay.
So if you go there...
For my fraternity.
For your fraternity.
Okay.
You've got banking ombudsman. In fact, some of the people who are coming there are from the motor industry because they also have regulatory bodies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we are all optimistic of the outcomes that we will make a good soup out of those. But the question now is, let's take the African continent. What is that cross-sectional trait or character that you'd say, it cuts across within the African continent that maybe you've shared with your colleagues before and you are still going to share it during this particular expo?
Really, most often than not, the key question is, how do we cut down on turnaround time? Okay. How can we reduce turnaround time? How can we be more effective? Because, and this question is pertinent in the sense that, some institutions that are fortunate enough to operate by way of orders or directions, whereas the ombudsman is engineered to depend on soft power, on persuasive reasoning. Okay. And that is why... Engagement. That is why at the end of the day, we say we are giving recommendations. Okay. Because they are not an order.
You don't necessarily enforce?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. And thank you for saying you don't necessarily enforce.
Okay.
Most often than not, because of the nature of ombudsman institutions, where we operate by way of recommendations, we get sweet names like toothless bulldogs, stuff like that, when actually Parliament is supposed to be the ombudsman's teeth.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I think we need to do is to better streamline the interaction between the Office of the Ombudsman and Parliament.
And you would confidently opine that you are nowhere near being toothless?
Certainly not.
Okay. Wonderful. Then what strategies, Mr. Oscar Gaselabone, have you employed to promote and inspire public trust in you as the Ombudsman and your ability now to say, look, I'm able to address your grievances fairly and impartially and within reasonable time?
It's two ways. We've got strategies aimed at complainants or general members of the public. Okay. We've got strategies directed at decision makers because really, investigations by nature is proactive.
Okay.
Something bad needs to happen before you come into the fray. Whereas when you consider the proactive aspect, we conduct what we call good governance seminars. heads of department seminars, where we want to sensitize decision makers on what is good public administration, what is bad public administration, and what good public administration requires them to do where an error that occasions injustice has been commissioned. And on the other hand, really, for both parties, we take our credibility from the quality of our decisions, because really ombudsman institutions really operate on the notion that any ombudsman institution is neither a lawyer for the complainant nor an apologist for government.
Thank you. We don't have time, but this has been very, very insightful. In just 30 seconds, zoning on the conference. Anything that you may have forgotten, just tell us about this particular conference, but sum it up. Okay. 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Members of the public are invited to come to the conference on the 31st and the 31st, specifically Dutupa Hall, where the exhibition is going to be held, and interact with all sorts of offices from all over the world.
Mr. Oscar Gaselabone, Northern Region Acting Assistant Ombudsman. We discussed the challenges and strategies needed to enhance your effectiveness in promoting good governance and protecting the entire citizenry. And you really have come to the party. Thank you for your insights, and I wish you all the best with your ombuds officers, human rights bodies, grievance handlers, integrity organizations, and related oversight and governance institutions as you converge from over 100 countries here in Gaborone next week into the month of August. Thank you for coming through.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah. Well, that is that. We have ended that discussion with Mr. Oscar Gaselabone, Northern Region Acting Assistant Ombudsman, to discuss the Second International Ombuds Expo, IOE, that will be held in Gaborone from the 29th of July running into the 2nd of August 2024. Stay with us. We're still here on Botswana Tonight.
The all-new hashtag PushaBW at a Chencheng Show, hosted by Khao Nadindwe and Sean Mongatane on BTV News Channel 289 every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Sitting down with some of Botswana's most exciting entrepreneurs and telling the stories behind some of our country's biggest brands and businesses. Tune in for a